Hello. At 12:56 p.m. on the 16th of October, 2022, the 911 operator unexpectedly received a strange call. There was no one speaking on the other end of the line, only a continuous sound, like a low scream. The 911 operator asked, "What are you reporting? What do you need to report?" Due to the low volume, the operator couldn't gather any information, but based on intuition, the voice sounded like a woman, and the sounds coming from her throat suggested her mouth was likely blocked and she couldn't speak. The 911 operator continued, "Okay, I'll assist you now. Please wait a moment. Do you know your address?" At that moment, some noise appeared in the phone's audio, like a commotion, an urgent knocking sound, and unusual sounds, as in special circumstances. The operator then used digital analysis to pinpoint the source. After receiving a response from the other party, the operator contacted the nearest police station to investigate the situation. A short while later, the voice on the other end of the line faded until it was completely silent. Although the phone was still connected, no sound was being played anymore. The story takes place in Lacey City, a suburban town in Washington State, in the western United States. This area includes coastal plains and convenient access to federal highways, so the lives of the residents are quite peaceful, healthy, and happy. In Lacey City, there is a couple. The husband, named Chae Kyung-an, 53 years old, and his wife, Young Suk-an, 42 years old. They have 2 children. Their eldest daughter is 20 years old, and their youngest son is 11 years old. They have lived there for 4 years, in a normal and peaceful neighborhood. But life isn't always calm and peaceful, and people are often very lucky. How fortunate life would have been if it weren't for the events of the summer of 2022. Due to family conflicts, Young Suk-an's wife filed for divorce. The couple separated and prepared for divorce proceedings. Cheeky moved out, so currently only the wife and their 2 children live in the house. He still occasionally visits to do laundry and take care of the children. Around 12:30 p.m. on the 16th of October, 2022, Young Suk-an and his 2 children returned from church and saw the husband's car parked in the yard. This wasn't surprising, as every week on that day the husband usually came to the house to do laundry and play with the children. Compared to their daily meetings before, they felt this change was much better, and this time they could discuss the divorce. The children, having just returned home, hadn't even had a chance to talk to their father before their mother told them to go to the supermarket. Following that was a conversation between the couple, neither willing to give in. They divided the property, and eventually, they started arguing. Chae Kyung-an said uncontrollably, "Even if I die, I will never give you any alimony." His wife was furious, but she didn't pay much attention to it because they had been living together for so long, and similar arguments had happened frequently over the years. She demanded that her husband leave the house immediately. Feeling tired, she went upstairs to change, but she didn't notice that her husband, Chae Kyung, had followed her into the bedroom. Taking advantage of her inattention, Chae Kyung attacked her from behind, then used tape to cover her mouth, blindfold her, and restrain her hands and feet. After doing that to his wife, Chae Kyung temporarily left. How could a man suddenly go so crazy? What did he want? Was he drunk? Such questions swirled in the wife's head. She fell into a state of extreme fear. The only thing she knew now was that her husband was having a fit of madness. In a state of delirium, she remembered the clock. The Apple Watch she was wearing frantically sent an emergency alert to a friend and her eldest daughter, while simultaneously calling 911 to report to the police. She was unable to speak and could only hope for a chance to survive. The phone call at the beginning of the video was made by her. At that moment, her eyes and mouth were taped shut, her hands and feet were bound by a dog, and she was alone in the room. Young Suk struggled and tried her best to send a distress message to the outside world. Fortunately, police cars arrived. Unfortunately, her husband, who happened to be on surveillance footage from a neighbor across the street, drove into the house and dragged Young Suk from the bedroom downstairs. He then noticed the watch on her wrist was still connected to 911. He felt something was wrong and thought he needed to act quickly, so he took off the watch, grabbed a hammer, and smashed it several times. He even hit Young Suk's wrist a few more times before forcing her to drink something. He took an unknown drug, then dragged her into the trunk of the car and continued driving away from the house. Surveillance video shows a police car arriving to investigate, coincidentally passing by the speeding truck. Because the police were in a hurry to go on an important mission, they did not stop to question the speeding truck in the residential area. The father's car conveniently drove out of the area and headed towards the mountains. At the same time, the police car arrived at the wife's house. They didn't know what had happened there. It could be robbery, kidnapping, or murder. They went to the front door and shouted loudly, "Lacey Police Team, if you are inside, let us know." The police call immediately caused the neighbors' dogs to bark loudly. After entering, the police saw a broken Apple Watch on the ground and were still contacting 911. There was no one inside the house. The front door and the back door were wide open. There was no trace of a thief inside. At that moment, the two children returned from the supermarket and were surprised to see a group of police officers. Upon arriving home, they found their parents missing. A bad feeling suddenly arose after a brief conversation. The eldest daughter said that half an hour earlier, her mother had told them they were out at the supermarket because she wanted to discuss something with their father. Shortly after, she received an urgent text message from her mother. On the way home, she had also seen her father's car drive by. During the investigation, police discovered that the family had received numerous reports of domestic violence, with the husband being the main perpetrator. Furthermore, Young Suk had a protective order prohibiting contact with the suspect, but this was later revoked by the court. Police questioned nearby neighbors and obtained some surveillance video. They then realized the speeding car had been driven by the suspect. They immediately launched a citywide manhunt and issued an arrest warrant. Along the way, a car had traveled approximately 11 kilometers from its starting point. It seemed far enough. No one would set foot in the remote forest. There, in a desolate place, a man and a woman were alone. They had once loved each other and married. They were a couple, not alone, but now their love for each other was gone, replaced only by hatred. Chae Kyung looked around and finally saw a place he liked, resembling a grave. Along the way, Young Suk was stunned. She felt the car stop, and before she could react, Chae Kyung dragged her out. Then she felt a sharp knife plunge into her chest. The intense pain quickly brought her back to her senses. At that moment, she realized she had been taken to a strange suburban area. She vaguely saw a person with a shovel digging as the sun set. The sky grew darker, and the hole in front of her grew larger and larger. The wife was restrained by dogs, her hands and feet covered, and she could only hear the sound of the shovel being thrown up and down. Gradually, a hole was formed. Chae Kyung dragged Young Suk down into the hole and began filling it with earth, probably because he had given her a drug. With the stab wounds to her chest, he assumed his wife was no longer able to resist or escape. Furthermore, he believed that if she were buried alive, she would surely suffocate and die. In reality, Young Suk was still quite conscious. She knew she couldn't escape because her hands and feet were bound by the dog. She felt the shovels of earth falling on her body and face. She could only slightly tilt her head to prevent the earth from getting into her nostrils. Fortunately, her attackers didn't notice this small movement. For a moment, the shoveling stopped. Young Suk could clearly feel the pressure of the earth on her body. She felt herself stomping on the ground several times. Then, suddenly, something heavier was placed on top of her. It was a tree trunk that her husband had specially prepared for her. After doing all that, he returned to the car. Young Suk, buried underground, relied solely on the thin air to survive. Upon hearing the car engine start, she began to try to twist her body. She struggled to free her hands from the bandages, then pulled off all the tape wrapped around her eyes, mouth, and ankles. This process lasted for an hour. The pain in her chest grew worse, but she didn't care. She slowly moved up from the ground, As she poked her head up, she saw her husband's car not far away. A layer of fog appeared on the car window, and the lights were on, providing the only light in the dark area. She felt terrified. After a while, she knew her wounds couldn't be treated any longer. Using all her strength, she pushed aside the tree trunk and climbed out of the hole. After getting out, she ran in the opposite direction of the car. About 20 to 30 minutes later, she saw a house. It was 0:52 a.m. Without thinking, she knocked on the door and went inside, telling the homeowner everything she had been through. She was covered in dirt and grime. But the family was still very kind and helpful, and called the police for her. After the police arrived, Young Suk was still hiding behind her family's shed. After confirming that the people who arrived were police officers, she ran out and pleaded for help, saying, "My husband wants to kill me. Please save me. He's still somewhere in this neighborhood." After seeing the dirt on her body, the bruises, and the remaining tape, the police believed her. They then helped clean her wounds and took her to the hospital. Let's look back at the sequence of events. This is Young Suk's house. This is the area where she was buried. And this is the house where she sought help. Around 7:38 a.m. on October 17th, the following morning, a resident walking down the street spotted a suspicious blue car parked near Statman Road. The police issued a search warrant and reported it to the Thurston County Sheriff's Office. The Thurston County Sheriff's Office responded quickly. 44 minutes later, the suspect, Chae Kyung, was arrested and detained. His physical and mental health was verified and found to be completely normal. He will face 3 separate charges of conspiracy to commit murder, kidnapping, and first-degree assault on the 18th of October, 2022. Chucky Hong was taken to Thurston County Jail to await trial. Later that day, police found a hole approximately 1.65 meters long, 0.76 meters wide, and 48 centimeters deep near Statman Road, where Young Suk was buried. Inside, traces of tape, blood, hair, and fragments of a watch were found. Prosecutors subsequently charged Chae Kyung with first-degree intentional murder, domestic violence, kidnapping, assault, and mockery. The deputy prosecutor also requested that the court not grant him bail. Young Suk himself hired a private lawyer, who said, "Please don't bail him. I'm very worried about my safety. I just want to emphasize that I'm really scared of him. If he gets out of here, he will definitely come back and kill me." Chae Kyung's defense lawyer stated the bail amount. The bail could be set at $150,000, enough to serve as a precautionary measure. Furthermore, Chae Kyung is a veteran who served in the U.S. intelligence agency for 30 years with no prior criminal record. It's possible that during his time working there, he faced immense psychological pressure, which could be an objective factor leading to his crime. However, this is what Young Suk worries about most. She knows her husband worked for the intelligence agency for 30 years. If he had malicious intentions, after his release from prison, he could do unimaginable things. Ultimately, the court agreed not to allow bail, and the case is still ongoing. Although Young Suk narrowly escaped death and returned to her normal life, going to the supermarket and preparing Halloween treats for her children, the after effects of the trauma are not just physical wounds. Perhaps it's a wound in her heart that she will never forget. Looking back at the entire case, the decisive tactics employed, and Chae Kyung's ruthlessness is truly terrifying. Young calling the police to save himself when in danger makes the situation even more tragic. When something unfortunate happens to us, let's try to stay calm and use everything we have to solve the problem. Let's put our faith in life because there are many good things waiting for us outside. Today's video ends here, and I'll see you in the next videos. Goodbye.